What is up, my friends? Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here. A beautiful, beautiful Friday afternoon. I think we are starting to get into the clear. Hold on. Before I say that, knock on wood, I think the worst of the weather is behind us. I think. Anyway, welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. It is a gorgeous Friday. We've made it yet again, my friends, to another doorstep of the weekend. I hope you are excited to kick back, relax, enjoy your, if you celebrate, enjoy your Easter. If you don't, enjoy your weekend, and watch some Phillies baseball because we have a lot to talk about today. Between the 4-game set that the Phillies just got through, the 3-game set that they're about to get to, we have a brand new segment that you may have seen if you've watched the Flyers or the Sixers show called the Ace Hardware Temperature Check. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And we're going to wrap up today's show. I don't often talk about, at least on this show, I don't often talk about media outside of Philadelphia. Now, one thing I've learned from one of my buddies from the PHLY Sixers show and our time working together in radio from Devon Givens was keep things inside the family, right? And what he means by that is you talk about your city, you talk about your teams, you talk about your business, and you handle your business internally. And when you start talking about other cities, you don't have the pulse the way that you do. I'm going to break that trend for a day because I have to talk about one player in particular. And the way that he's being spoken about in his city, especially on sports talk radio, is wild to me because I'm sure you probably know who we're talking about, but that's how we're going to tease that for now. But let's start with this series that just ended. The Phillies split with the San Francisco Giants. They win games 2 and 4. They lose games 1 and 3. And yesterday, the Phillies jumped on Jordan Hicks for 5 runs in the first inning. They sent 9 guys to the plate. They had 5 hits. They scored 5 runs. All 5 of the first 5 batters reached base safely. And they did an excellent job of jumping on Jordan Hicks early and establishing a commanding lead after Cristopher Sanchez gave up a run in the first. And the Phillies, for the most part, did a decent job over the last 2 nights of scoring in the first inning. Now, you can say they let Robbie Ray off the hook in the loss on Wednesday night, and they did. They only scored 2 runs. He didn't have a lot of command. He walked a run in. So did Aaron Nola. But they scored 7 runs over their last 2 first innings, which really has sparked their number in like how many runs per game they've scored in the first inning. They're at almost 0.8 runs per game in the first inning. And that's, again, due in large part because they've had success over the last 2 nights. But they did what they needed to do in yesterday afternoon's game because that felt like a moment, felt like a deep breath, felt like an exhale moment for Phillies fans and probably for the Phillies offense as well. Because they really, really needed that. And I think they needed it for a multitude of reasons. The conversations about how they had struggled against starters early in games was real. You could go all the way back to opening weekend when they struggled against Mackenzie Gore and they struggled against Mitchell Parker. You could go to the next series against the Rockies where they struggled for the most part against German Marquez. They struggled against Antonio Senzatella. You could go to the next series where they struggled against Yoshinobu Yamamoto and finally got to Tyler Glasnow because of patience. And the list could go on and on. There were a lot of struggles early in the season against starting pitching, especially the first time through the lineup. So there was like a deep breath exhale moment for the Phillies yesterday when they scratched out 5 runs. And they did it again via patience. They sat out Jordan Hicks. They allowed him to work himself into bad counts. They allowed him to work himself into bad spots. And then they took advantage. Bryson Stott with a leadoff base hit. Bryce Harper with a walk. Kyle Schwarber with a bases-loaded base hit. Nick Castellanos delivers. They've put together some really good at-bats over the last couple of nights in the first inning of games. And sure, you could say that they only got 2 off of Robbie Ray. And that kind of brings us to the second point as to why it was a deep exhale first inning for the Phillies. They scored 2 runs off of Robbie Ray in the first after Aaron Nola had given up 4. It felt like they kind of scratched and clawed their way back a little bit in the bottom half of the inning to give themselves a little bit of flexibility, to get back into the game, to get a little bit of breathing room. But the reality of the situation was Robbie Ray should have given up probably 5 or 6 in the first himself. He really wasn't very good in that first inning. And they kind of let him off the hook. And scoring 2 is better than scoring none, but both runs were scored via the walk. And at one point entering yesterday's game, the Phillies had more walks with the bases loaded than they did hits. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that's to walk with the bases loaded is a bad thing, because it's not. It's an RBI. It's running up pitch counts. It's a run. And so to me, a walk is, the old saying, walk's as good as a hit here. And sure, you'd love a bases clearing double or a 2-run single down the line. But when a team is struggling offensively, that old little league cliche, a walk is as good as a hit, could be applicable. And I think last night or 2 nights ago, it probably was. The issue was they stranded runners, and they struggled with runners in scoring position all night on Wednesday night. And they've struggled with runners in scoring positions, basically all week and for 3 straight series. Against the Cardinals, they struggled. Against the Braves, they struggled. And then against the Giants, they struggled with runners in scoring position. And as Linda points out, that was, to me, one of the worst professional baseball games I've seen in a long time. So to have been there probably was even worse, because the wind was bad, the weather was bad, the pitching was bad. I comped the first inning on Wednesday to a Little League game. And I think the reason I did that was because it was like ducks on the pond, right? Stationary baseball, walks, and more walks. And it was the first time in over 20 years that 2 starting pitchers walked to hit a run in the same inning. And Aaron Nola and Robbie Ray did it in the same inning in the first inning. So it was just a really ugly, gross baseball game for all of those measures. Not just because the game stunk, but because the weather was nasty. My buddy Ray Dunn from The Fanatic ended up going kind of viral, if you will. He got picked up by the Weather Channel because he took a video of the winds and the flags whipping, and he kind of went a little bit pseudo-viral. But it was a terrible baseball game. And yeah, they scored 2, but they stranded runners, as they have done for a bulk of the last 3 series. So yesterday in the first inning, it felt like there was a weight off the Phillies' shoulders. They came through with runners in scoring position in the first inning yesterday. Schwarber delivered. Castellanos delivered. Harper in the 3-hole moved runners along and allowed those 2 guys to pick up crucial base hits and to drive runs in. Alec Boehm delivered. And that ball that Alec Boehm hit, it probably should have been caught by Matos. He was tracking back. The wind was blowing. It kept carrying. Probably should have been caught by Matos, but I'm going to give credit to Alec Boehm in that situation. He squared that ball up. I mean, he absolutely crushed that baseball, and it kept tracking and tracking and tracking. And maybe on a day where the wind is blowing out, it's a home run, off the ivy. Maybe on the day where the wind's significantly blowing in, it is a fly out. But Alec Boehm squared that baseball up, and he really, really needed that. I mean, it's back-to-back nights where he was able to deliver an RBI double in the series earlier, the RBI triple in that at-bat. And for a guy who we talked about a lot last week, maybe getting a little bit unlucky, if you will, because he's been hitting the baseball hard and kind of getting, unlucky with certain outs. Those 2 swings were important for him. Those 2 swings allowed him to kind of get off the slide a little bit and to have some success. And he's still struggling overall. The average is still low. The slug's still low. The extra base hits are still low. But those two swings, I think, were important to his success because he really, really, really needed them. But those 5 runs that the Phillies scored in that first inning, I think, were such a weight off their shoulders. And it was a bulk of their damage. They scored 5 of their 6 runs in the first inning, hold on to win 6-4. And the insurance run was important down the stretch because Jose Alvarado gives up the home run to Tyler Fitzgerald But the Phillies end up winning by 2, and they split the series 2-2. Now, I talked about the offense to start, but really, to me, the story of yesterday's game was Cristopher Sanchez, who continues to just exceed my expectations. This dude is the truth. This dude's legit. I talked about him after his last start. I have talked about him for months now and probably years now. As the president of the Cristopher Sanchez fan club, I take joy in every single start that he makes. And I take a little bit of personal wins when he pitches well. Let me give you some numbers on Cristopher Sanchez. The Phillies have won 11 consecutive starts that he's made. Now, he's not won all of those starts, but they have won 11 consecutive starts that he has made. So far this season, he is 2-0 with a 2.96 ERA. And yesterday might have been his masterpiece of the first 4 games. He had a career-high 12 strikeouts. 11 of those 12 strikeouts came on the changeup. The 12 strikeouts that he had were the most by a left-handed pitcher since Cole Hamels did it in 2015. Do you know what Cole Hamels did that day that he struck out 13 back in 2015? He no-hit the Chicago Cubs. That's the kind of territory that Cristopher Sanchez has found himself in. He has an over 11 strikeouts per 9 this season. He's better than 5 strikeouts per walk. His strikeout per walk ratio is over 5. Opponents are hitting less than 240 off of him, and they're slugging less than 300. And their OBP is less than 300, and their slugging is less than 400. What Cristopher Sanchez has done has been nothing short of sensational to this point in the season and over the last 35 or 36 starts that he has made. I have talked about his maturation process a ton. The velocity increase, we've talked about that a ton. And of course, we've talked about the changeup plenty. But every time he does something with the changeup, it's more and more rare air. He gets more and more into territories of Phillies legends, elite level pitching, legends of the game. He gets more and more into those conversations. Cristopher Sanchez has raised himself from a 5 to a 3 to a 2 to a guy that on a team that doesn't include Zach Wheeler would be a 1. I'm ready to say it. I have said for probably the last 20 starts or so, he's like a 2 or a 3. And then over the last 11 starts, I said he's probably a 2. Cristopher Sanchez is a bona fide ace. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He is legit. The velocity's up to 97, 98 consistently. He's able to pitch up in the zone with the sinker. He's become a complete pitcher. Cristopher Sanchez was a thrower when he first started. Guy with good stuff. Velocity could always be there, but no control, no command. And so the Phillies told him that he was going to be, you're going to work your velocity down. The Rays started this, but the Phillies really honed in on it. You're going to work your velocity down. We want you to become a pitcher. We don't want you to be a thrower anymore. We want you to be a commander of the strike zone. We want you to be a guy that can be a 6 and 7 inning guy. And so he brought his velocity down to 93, 94, and he's worked it back up. The command has gotten better and better and better as his seasons have gone on. His whip went from 1.2 last year to 1.1 this year. He's gone from giving up 9 hits a game to 8 hits a game. He's gone from walking 2.2 to being at about the same, but he's pitching more innings to get to that number. His strikeout rates have gone from 7.6 per 9 to, as I mentioned, 11.5 per 9. He finished 10th in the National League Cy Young voting last year, and he's gotten better. He's going to finish in the top 5 or 6 if he keeps pitching this way. He might even finish better than that, but it's early in the season, right? We're only 4 starts in. But the strides that he has made, he's averaging just over 6 innings pitched per start. He's giving up less than a hit per inning pitched. His whip, again, as I mentioned, is 1.1. And what has gotten to me is the best of the best is he knows how to pitch in any spot. He's not afraid to fall behind. He works back in counts. He's willing to throw the changeup in any particular spot. And obviously, we knew his changeup was his best pitch. But somehow the changeup has gotten better since he's gone on and been acquired. The Phillies traded for Cristopher Sanchez on November 20th, 2019. And at the time, it felt like the Phillies were giving up on one of their higher regarded prospects in Curtis Mead. Curtis Mead has gone on to take 229 at-bats in Major League Baseball. He has 54 hits, 2 home runs, and he's hitting 236 in his Major League career. He has a sub-300 OBP, and he's just above 300 slugging. He has a 71 OPS plus in his career, and his numbers this year so far, 4 hits and 24 at-bats, 1 RBI, 1 run scored, a near sub-200 slug, and a 468 on-base percentage, or OPS, excuse me. He has a 39 OPS plus to begin the year. In a trade that felt like the Phillies were giving up on Curtis Mead, turned out to be one of the surefire deals of the last 5 or 6 years that the Phillies have made. Now, the Phillies have acquired some really good free agents over the last 5 or 6 years, starting with Bryce Harper, acquiring Kyle Schwarber, acquiring Nick Castellanos, acquiring Zach Wheeler, trading for JT Realmuto. But perhaps one of the best trades that the Phillies have made, included sending Curtis Mead to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Cristopher Sanchez. Because the Phillies got an ace. And the best part about this is he doesn't have to be the ace of this staff. Zach Wheeler can shoulder that load. Zach Wheeler can be the bona fide ace of this staff. Go up against other teams' best. Go up against other teams' best starters, as you're going to see tonight when he faces Sandy Alcantara. And allow Chris Sanchez to just go out and be as successful as he possibly can be. Cristopher Sanchez is utterly dominant at Citizens Bank Park. The numbers have spoken for themselves. And he was utterly dominant again last night. I brought up the 12 strikeouts as a career high. 11 of them came on the changeup. He has been unbelievable with that changeup. It's like pulling a string. It's like he has the baseball attached to a yo-yo, and when he gets down the mound, he's pulling the string and throwing the changeup successfully. Last night, he threw 50 changeups, the most of his 97 pitches. He used the changeup as his primary pitch yesterday. He got 22 whiffs, which is crazy enough in and of itself on 50 pitches. But he got 22 whiffs on 29 swings. He got whiffs on 76% of his swings yesterday on the changeup. 3 out of every 4, better than 3 out of every 4 swings that he got on the changeups resulted in a whiff. The Giants put 3 balls in play against the changeup yesterday. It was absolutely, utterly dominant how good that changeup was. And the one thing I wanted to point out about Cristopher Sanchez and what's made him so effective as a pitcher, because I'm not going to get into all of it because we've talked about sinker velocity. We've talked about the discrepancy between the sinker velocity and the changeup velocity. We talked about his ability to work up in the zone and then go back down. We've talked about his ability to pull the string on the righties. I don't know if anybody has talked about Cristopher Sanchez more than I have and gushed over Cristopher Sanchez more than I have. And I'm not saying that to tout myself. I'm saying we've done it ad nauseum. Cristopher Sanchez has become such a heady pitcher that he is so smart and tactical on the mound. And the reason that I say this, and this is in part to JT Realmuto too, I thought he called an excellent game. And I've been harsh on JT on his pitch calling and his pitch selection in the past. I thought JT Realmuto called an excellent game, and this is a task to both he and Cristopher Sanchez. It is a tip of the cap to both of those guys, because the one thing that those two guys did well was recognize that the changeup was the Giants hitters were having difficulty with the changeup in part because of the shadows. There were real, tangible shadows, like you could see them on the broadcast yesterday, and it was something that stood out to me from probably the latter portions of the second inning until about the 6th inning, that the changeup, the shadows were giving the Giants, they were giving all the hitters problems, I think, but they were giving the Giants hitters problems specifically on the changeup because Cristopher Sanchez's arm action is so good on it. It's so repeatable. He's so fluid that it looks like it's going to be a fastball out of hand, and then it drops off the table. and it's got that downward vertical drop. It breaks slightly away from right-handed hitters. And as we've talked about in the past, teams are going to throw as many righties as they possibly can at Cristopher Sanchez, and for good reason, because he's really, really good against left-handed hitters. But what that allows Cristopher Sanchez to do is go heavy changeup. He threw 49 of his 50 changeups yesterday to right-handed hitters. And teams at some point are almost going to have to go reverse splits on him because he's able to get that changeup to dive out over the plate. And that's where you see guys kind of flailing, right? You see that right-handed swing where the bat head and the hands are out in front of the body because the legs and the hips have already disengaged, right? So when the hitter's out in front like that, when the hips have disengaged thinking it's fastball, that's where hitters are all hands. They're trying to keep the shoulder back. They're trying to keep the arms back. That's where the hitters become all hands. And you see that, like, it's hard to do without a bat, obviously, but you see that, like, flail, and they're out in front. And so Cristopher Sanchez and JT Realmuto took advantage of it yesterday. They do it against righties anyway, but they took advantage of the shadows, I think, yesterday, and that played a huge part, basically from the second inning to the sixth inning. All right, we're going to continue to talk about this series a little bit, but I do want to preview the Marlins series coming up this weekend, and we are going to get into our Ace Hardware temp check. And again, as I said, we will talk about one hitter in particular, not in Philly, that has been kind of getting the ire of his sports cities markets, and honestly, I think it's nuts. We'll talk more about that in just a second. It is the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be right back after we tell you about some of our friends right here at PHLY. Let's start with our friends over at TrueMark Financial Credit Union, because saving money is difficult. I know about getting ahead of your finances, or more importantly, falling behind on your finances. We've done it throughout the course of our lifetime. Whether you're still kind of recovering from the holiday season and you're trying to balance that credit card budget, or you're thinking about saving for a home, or maybe you're thinking about saving for retirement, whatever the case may be, we have all thought about our finances all the time. But the best thing about TrueMark Financial Credit Union is they have the ability to help you with your financial goal and personalize that goal and tailor it to you. So again, whether it's buying a house or taking a dream vacation or just thinking about building your emergency fund, TrueMark Financial Credit Union has the perfect savings accounts for you. They offer high-rate certificates and money market accounts to help your money grow faster and work harder for you. And April is Financial Literacy Month, so you can get started. Maybe you need financial literacy help and you're a little bit lost on how to help your finances. Or if you're looking to help your kids get into financial literacy so they know what it's like to be smart and savvy with your money, what it means to save $1, what it means to spend $1. TrueMark Financial has the Greenlight app that can help your kids get into the financial spending market, and you have the ability to control how much they spend, where they spend it, and the ability to show them what it's like to save $1. So head on over to TrueMark.com/greenlight to get all of the details and to sign up today. And don't miss the chance to set up your kids for future financial success. And speaking of the right finances, if you're thinking about putting in new floors, if you're thinking about putting in new tile, the only place that I would recommend is Empire Today, because all Empire does is flooring. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to the big box store and figuring things out there. But the thing with the big box store is they do a little bit of everything. They don't perfect one craft. Empire perfected flooring. So when you go to the big box stores, you might talk to somebody who's filling in for the fill-in, or maybe somebody that works in hardware, but they're not quite as savvy in flooring, or the same could be said for the outdoor section, or whatever the case may be. You may talk to somebody who doesn't perfect and hasn't mastered flooring. When you go to Empire Today and you go to empiretoday.com, you're dealing with a group of people who flooring is all they do. That's why when you need your home court or home field advantage, you need your home floor advantage with Empire Today. And listen, Empire Today has the best floors and the best fit for your flooring because they live and breathe flooring. You can pick the right flooring and the right color for your spaces. So whether, again, it's hardwood, it's tile, it's carpet, Empire Today is going to set you up for the best success that you can possibly find. And you're going to see how it looks with your furniture in your house. You'll get precise measurements taken and have all of your questions answered, so there are absolutely no surprises. And like talking about the finances, here's where that comes into play. Empire Today gets you clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing, plus you can schedule installation as soon as the next day. So schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better when you do them at home. PHLY listeners can receive a $350 discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Yeah, you heard that right. A $350 discount with the code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit EmpireToday.com/PHLY for full details. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tyler Zulli here, and this PHLY Phillies podcast is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So we talked a little bit about the Giants series. We're going to preview the Marlins series in just a second, but before we do that, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Linda, Rose, K-Red, Barbara Carroll, Steve Garrison, everybody that's in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate you joining us. There was one comment I wanted to highlight here. And, here you go. Steve Garrison says, Harper has good numbers against Alcantara. Steve, you're right. He has excellent numbers against Alcantara. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the Marlins preview, because I did take a bet today that featured Bryce Harper. So we'll talk more about that. Linda's calling a Schwarber today off of Sandy Alcantara, or just in general, I guess. And K-Red, yes, Marsh is noticeably left off that list for good reason, because the acquisitions that they have made over the years have been really, really good for the most part. The Brandon Marsh one is starting to, well, maybe not starting to, has trended in the wrong direction for a really long time. All right, so, let me tell you before we get, sorry, I lost my train of thought here for a second. All right, let's get back to this this feature segment, because we haven't done this yet. This is a brand new segment, and as I've said, you may have seen this on the on the Flyers and Sixers show before. It is a segment that has been featured pretty prominently on their two shows, but now that their seasons are over, it's coming with us, and that is our Ace Hardware temperature check. Now, we're going to check in on all of the players that may be heating up or cooling down for the Philadelphia Phillies. This segment is brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware. And today we're going to talk about a player who I believe is heating up. And that player is Bryson Stott. And specifically, Bryson Stott in the leadoff spot for your Philadelphia Phillies. Bryson Stott has been excellent in the leadoff spot over the last couple of weeks. So he's been in and out of it for a little bit now, but I think more prevalent and more prominently over the last week. Bryson Stott has 3 hits in his last 3 starts in the leadoff spot. So let's take you back through the week. Stott has Monday, leadoff spot, base hit to start the game, or to start the bottom of the first. Tuesday, leadoff spot, base hit to start the bottom of the first. Wednesday, he didn't play against the lefty Robbie Ray. Edmundo Sosa started instead. And the Thursday, yesterday, against Jordan Hicks, leadoff spot, base hit to start the bottom of the first. 3 hits in 3 leadoff appearances. Now, I have been the Kyle Schwarber advocate for the leadoff spot. I've been that way for quite some time. And I have said that the Phillies win with Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. The numbers tell you the Phillies win with Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. He has been a catalyst for this team as the Phillies leadoff hitter for 2 years plus now. And while those numbers have tangible merit, and I still kind of hold on to those numbers, I'm starting to feel like Bryson Stott is having a little bit of a claim to the leadoff hitter spot, specifically against right-handed pitching. And the reason that I brought up Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot, past the tangible stuff, past the numbers, past the Phillies record with him in the leadoff spot, was I didn't know how the lineup would shake out. I didn't know how much Rob Thomson would be bought into lefty-righty type of thing. And when you have Bryson Stott in the leadoff spot, it is inevitable that the Phillies would have back-to-back lefties sometime in their top 4. Whether it was Stott and Harper with Bohm, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but bear with me. Stott and Harper with maybe Turner hitting third. I'm just making this up, right? Or Stott and Turner with, which is what you've seen more frequently, Stott and Turner with Harper and Schwarber back-to-back, it was inevitable that a lefty would be back-to-back in the top 4. But I think when you're doing it against a right-handed pitcher to begin the game, as you saw with Jordan Hicks the other night, and I think you may see more and more. I think you would probably are going to see it again tonight with Alcantara on the mound. 3 lefties in the top 4 for the time being has seemingly worked. And I think it's because of Bryson Stott being in the leadoff spot. He's got 8 hits in the last 7 games. He has scored a run in 3 consecutive games that he's played. Those numbers are, I think, due in large part because he has been in the leadoff spot. He scored to open up the bottom of the first yesterday. He's been able to extended bats. He's been comfortable in the leadoff spot. But to me, this only works because Bryson Stott's at-bats have been better. And what I've seen from Bryson Stott so far is more complete at-bats. Bryson Stott has seen 4.71 pitches per plate appearance this season so far. That's second across Major League Baseball. Only the Dodgers' Andy Pages has more. He's at 4.91. Bryson Stott grinds out at bats. And when Bryson Stott was going in 2023, probably his best statistical season of his 3-year-plus career so far, when he was going, he was grinding out at bats. When he was going, he was deadly with 2 strikes. When he was going, he was really difficult to strike out. And so he succeeded lower in the lineup more times than not. A little bit in the 2-hole, but lower in the lineup more times than not because he saw a lot of pitches. He grinds out at bats. He didn't strike out a ton. His whiff rates have always been good, but they've been just like last year they were excellent. This year they've been really good so far. And his plate discipline has been excellent throughout the majority of his career. Last year, the problem with Bryson Stott was he struggled with 2 strikes. And the reason that he struggled with 2 strikes is because he wasn't able to catch up to the fastball up in the zone. And so pitchers with 2 strikes got to a point where they basically said, all right, 2-strike count, fastball up in the zone. See you, buddy. Go sit down. Bye-bye. If they threw 96, 97, 98, they basically were going to beat Bryson Stott. And so this year, Bryson Stott has had done a much better job of keeping himself in favorable counts, and even when he is with 2 strikes, of at least fouling those fastballs up in the zone off. And when he fouls those fastballs up in the zone off, it forces pitchers to either work back down in the zone, go to the breaking ball, try stuff down and away, and that's where Stott succeeds. Bryson Stott, when he's going at his best, is serving up base hits all over the field. And you saw it yesterday with a base hit to left field to open up the game. And in fact, the Phillies had back-to-back base hits to the opposite field to open up the game because then Trey Turner sprayed one to right center. But Bryson Stott's spray chart is at its best when it is truly a spray chart. And so far this year, Stott has 16 hits, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 to left field or to the left side of the field. And that's where Bryson Stott's at its best. And he does a lot of that damage with 2 strikes. And that's come to play when he fouls a fastball up in the zone and then he's able to go down and away, kind of, go with a pitch on the outer edge, a breaking ball or a fastball down and away and send it, serve it to left center field or down the left field line. And so if Bryson Stott's doing it's a long-winded way of saying if Bryson Stott is doing all of this, he's a very viable leadoff hitter, especially against right-handed pitching. Now, I will say this. I think I've gotten to a point where I'm ready to see Bryson Stott again against more left-handed pitching. Because the reason that I wasn't ready to see him against as much left-handed pitching as you would like to see from your everyday second baseman or as close to an everyday second baseman as possible is he struggled with the fastball up in the zone, especially from the lefties. If he's able to have a little bit more success against that pitch, then I feel more comfortable with him playing closer to every day. Now, I still would like to get Edmundo Sosa at bats. Now, his towards start has kind of faltered a little bit, but I still would like to get Edmundo Sosa at bats. So if you see a particularly difficult lefty, Robbie Ray, for example, earlier in the week, Chris Sale in the series against the Braves, the likelihood is Bryson Stott is still probably going to sit. But for me, if I can trust him against lefties a little bit more and get some more reps against lefties, I'm ready to kind of give him more and more at-bats against left-handed pitching. And so if he's able to do that, he can hit 7th against lefties and lead off against righties. He becomes a really, really valuable piece for this offense. Now, I will say this. We talked about Alec Boehm being a little bit unlucky in his first couple of weeks. Bryson Stott has trended in the other direction. His expected numbers are worse than what he's put together. So maybe Bryson Stott's getting a little bit lucky. But it's almost one of those things where I can almost separate the two and cherry pick stats a little bit, where I can say Alec Boehm is getting unlucky and I think he'll bounce out. And then I can say Bryson Stott is getting maybe a little bit lucky, but until he falters, I'm just going to keep taking it. I'm just going to keep taking the success that he's had. And yeah, it's cherry picking stats a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit unfair. Maybe it's me saying, well, if another team did this, I would look at, another team's leadoff hitter and go, well, his expected batting average is in the 7th percentile and his expected slugging percentage is in the 9th percentile. And his average exit velocity is literally in the last percentile in all of baseball. And he's not hitting the ball hard and his bat speed's slow and he's not squaring the ball up. I'd use all of those things, and that unfortunately for that other player is, letting the facts get in the way of a good story. Or in that case, it would be the inverse, right? But I think I can use it. This is a little bit of a cheating way out, but I can use this to Bryson Stott and say, if he has, a 1 for 12, then sure. Then we're talking about, well, all of those things have come into play. He's not hitting the ball hard. His bat speed's slow. His bat speed's always been slow, but his bat speed's slow and he's not catching up to fastballs and he struck out 8 times in 14 at bats or whatever the case may be. That's when I can start to use those numbers to tell the further story. But that's our Ace Hardware temperature check as we check in on a player heating up. That's Bryson Stott. We'll do that once per week throughout the course of the season. But Bryson Stott, to me, is heating up right now. As his average has risen over the last couple of weeks, his OBP's up, his OPSs and his slugging are up from last year. I have been really, really happy with Bryson Stott so far. All right, we are going to pause really quickly before we get into the Marlins series, and then we're going to wrap up with that tease that I keep giving you about one player outside of Philadelphia. This is the PHLY Phillies podcast. It is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be right back as we tell you about some of our friends here at PHLY. Yeah, let me tell you about our friends over at Ashley Furniture. And I told you about this last week. My wife and I bought some furniture from Ashley a couple of months ago, and it was delivered recently, and it looks great. It was time for furniture. We had our old college dorm room furniture. The back was falling off of mine. One of the, I swear to you, this is not an exaggeration. This is not a sell. One of the bins, I don't know, what do you call them? The rows, one of the rows in the dresser, I literally had to put on the ground because it was sinking into the rest of the drawers. Drawers, I guess is the word you would use, was sinking into the rest of the drawers, and it was time for new furniture. So we went on over to our local Ashley, which is right around the corner from us, and got some incredible new furniture, and I got a new dresser, my wife got a new dresser, and it looks like we're adults now. We look like we have a functioning, adult bedroom and not a college dorm room anymore. So if you're looking for new furniture, the best low prices are blooming at Ashley, so spring into savings with my friends over at Ashley. You can save up to 50% off living rooms, bedrooms, and dining rooms. And the best part is you can have it delivered for free. We had 2 pieces of furniture that were delivered to our home, and we're on the 2nd floor of our apartment building, so it's not an easy task. The guys were in and out in about 5 minutes. I can't say enough about the customer service that we had over at Ashley as well. You can save on top brand mattresses and get that free delivery, as I mentioned. And best part is setup and removal. Now, what I did to my dresser was take a hammer to it and smash it up into a bunch of different pieces. But if I needed them to take it out, they would have done it as well. So spring into savings now at Ashley at South Jersey and Philadelphia. Financing with approved credit. Minimum purchase is required. Some exclusions may apply. See store for complete details. Hurry on over to Ashley. Visit ashleyfurniture.com for more information. And of course, let me tell you about our friends over at Parks Casino. Staying local with my casino of choice. Another thing of the many things that I love about Parx Casino is the Bet Parx app. I tell you all the time about the Excite Center. I tell you all the time about going to Parx Casino, but sometimes you just want to hang out on your couch, and you can do that and play the best Parx Casino games and feel like you're in person with the Parx Casino and Bet Parx app. You can play pop culture slots, roulette, cards, dice games, and so much more on the Bet Parx app. Now, me, myself, when I play the card games, I like to play blackjack. And the best part is you get live dealers all the time and bring the online casino, the games that you love, to the casino online and to your home or on the go. So you don't even have to be home. You could just, maybe you're driving. Well, not if you're driving. Let me rephrase that. If you're the passenger, not if you're driving. Please don't do it if you're driving. If you're in the passenger seat of your car and you're thinking about passing the time, get in on all the action, the slots, the table games, the casinos, roulette. You can do it all on the Bet Parx app. So download the Bet Parx app and create an account today. You'll receive an offer that you can't pass up. New users are eligible to receive up to $1,000 back if you're down in the first 24 hours after signing up. Bet Parx online casino is available to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and Michigan residents. Terms and conditions do apply. Parx Casino, this is how you win. Must be 21 and older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. It's brought to us by our friends over at Bet365. Let's talk about the Phillies-Marlins series for just a little bit, because this is the first of the 4 series that the Phillies are going to see against the Miami Marlins. And one of the gripes that I hear a lot about the Phillies and Marlins over the tenure of the Phillies being good is that the Phillies do not play well against the Miami Marlins. And that's something that probably needs to be improved upon for, I guess in perpetuity, basically. But over the last 3 seasons, in which the Phillies have made the postseason each of the last 3 seasons, the Phillies are 12-7, which was the best mark by a Phillies team against the Marlins since 2013. They were 12-7. That record against the Marlins, their record against the Nationals in 2022, was a huge reason as to why the Phillies were able to sneak into the playoffs and get in as a wild card and go all the way to the World Series. Now, not make the World Series, of course, but you get my point. They did a great job of beating up on the Marlins and beating up on the Nationals for a pretty sizable amount of wins to get to the threshold they needed to be a wild card team and to get into the postseason. The following year, in 2023, they were just 8-7 against the Marlins. Last year, they were 7-6. Over the last, let's say, 15 years, do you want to take a guess as to how many times the Phillies won 12 or more games against the Marlins in a series? Now, the number, of course, has changed because they're not playing teams 19 times anymore. It's a more balanced schedule. You want to take a guess from 2010 to 2022? Do you want to take a guess as to how many times the Phillies have beaten the Marlins 12 times or more in a series in a season series? Just 4. Now, granted, they were bad for quite some time, but the 2010 and 2011 Phillies beat the Marlins 13 and 12 times, and then the 2013 team won 12 times, and the 2022 team won 12 times. The Phillies have had about 500 success against the Marlins over the last couple of seasons. And in fact, the year the Marlins made the postseason in 2020 and the Phillies didn't, they went just 3-7 against the Marlins. Now, 2021, the Phillies were kind of knocking on the doorstep of maybe making the playoffs, maybe not. They were 9-10 that year against the Marlins. So a good winning percentage against teams like the Marlins, like the Nationals, is what propels you, in part, to be closer to like the 95 win team that they saw last year versus the 87-88 win team that they've been in years past. Now, getting into the playoffs is all that matters, but if you're looking to win the division, the overall record against bad teams like the Marlins, I think has to be at least above 500, and you're hoping for more. So the Phillies start a 3-game set with the Marlins tonight. By the way, the Phillies were 7-6 against the Marlins last year and still found a way to win 95 games. So maybe that, kind of bucks that trend just a little bit. But the Phillies start a 3-game set with the Marlins tonight, who got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks coming into this series. And they gave up 22 runs in the 3 games. The Marlins are 8-10 this year. They've scored 75 runs, which is good for like 20th across baseball. In fact, it is 20th across baseball, but they also scored 18 runs in 2 games over a 2-game stretch against the Nationals. So if you take those 2 games out, not fair to extrapolate, but again, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. If you take those 2 games out, the Marlins have scored 58 runs this year across 16 games. It's about 3.5 runs per game. The number would put them at 25th across baseball. They, at times, have struggled to score this year. Now, it's funny because their offense enters this series as the 7th best batting average for a team across baseball. As a team, they're hitting .255. But they don't have a ton of extra base hits. They don't hit the long ball a ton. And they strike out a lot. Matt Mervis has 6 home runs for the Marlins through the first 18 games for them. No other player has more than 2. And in fact, they only have 12 home runs as a team. So he has half of their home runs. Their 12 home runs as a team is second worst in baseball. Only the Royals have less at 10. They're not a team that's going to, outslug you. When they win games, again, they had 2 games where they, jumped out to 18 runs over the course of 2 games. But their wins this year have been, for the most part, relatively low scoring. And now, of course, my internet's going to crap out on me to try to give you the exact numbers. But for the most part, more times than not, their wins have been like fairly relatively low scoring. So you have an opportunity at hand to jump on their starting pitching this week, who Alcantara starts tonight. He's been okay this year. I think he's had one rough start, but you have the opportunity to jump on some starting pitching later in the series and really do some damage against the Marlins at home. This offense, by the way, the Marlins offense that I'm bringing up, they strike out a lot. They've struck out 175 times this year, which is the 7th most in baseball. The Phillies now have faced 2 teams in the top 7 over the last 2 series in terms of strikeouts. And the Phillies did some damage in terms of strikeouts, right? Jesus Luzardo had a decent day with strikeouts. Cristopher Sanchez had a really excellent day with 12 strikeouts. But this Marlins offense is really just okay. It's nothing to write home about. They don't really scare you all that much. And as I said, now they've had a couple of games where they put up 5 and 7, but they won 5-4 twice, 3-2 and 4-2. They put up a 4 spot. They've scored more runs as of recent, even in losses. But I think this is an offense that you can hold down if your pitching's good, which you expect it to be. With Zach Wheeler on the mound tonight, you're going to feel really good about that. Now, Sandy Alcantara is pitching for the Marlins. But it's going to be a really good pitching matchup tonight. But I think that this is a team that you can get to, and I'm expecting the Phillies to take 2 out of 3 at home to this series. The one guy that you should look out for is Xavier Edwards. Last year, he was excellent. He's got really, really, really good bat-to-ball skills. He struck out 18 times already so far in 18 games, but he's hitting .333. He's got 24 hits. He's been on base 35 times already to start this season. He's the 8th best. He's got the 8th best batting average in baseball among qualified hitters, the 11th best OBP. He's the guy that you're going to look out for. Mervis hits the long ball so far, and Xavier Edwards is their trend. He's their tone setter. He's their trend setter. He's the guy that gets things going at the top of the lineup. If you could beat those 2 guys, this is a very beatable offense for the Marlins. Now, inversely, Sandy Alcantara gets the start tonight. It is the 20th time that Sandy Alcantara is going to start against the Phillies in his career. Here's a little trivia for you, because I think this is really cool. Sandy Alcantara becomes the 5th active pitcher to start 20 or more games against the Phillies. Trivia time for you in the chat. You can play along at home. Trivia time in the chat. How many 4 other starters have made 20 or more career starts, active starters, against the Phillies? Can you name them? I'll give you a second in the chat. And I will tell you this. I would say of the 4, 2 guys are really, really gettable. One guy, in my opinion, is a future Hall of Famer. The other one has a merit to being a future Hall of Famer. The other 2 guys, longevity, have pitched a ton of years, have had varying levels of success throughout their career. I'm curious in the chat, of the other 4, can you name who they are? Steven Garrison has gotten the first one. I think he's probably the easiest one of the 4. Max Scherzer is the active leader in starts made against the Phillies at 31. Max Scherzer is 18-5 against the Phillies in his career with a 2.58 ERA. He's thrown almost 200 innings and has a near sub-1 whip. He is and he has 247 strikeouts in those 195 innings pitched. So Max Scherzer is correct. Justin Verlander has been guessed a lot, K-Red. Justin Verlander is not correct. You have to remember, Verlander has spent a ton of his career in the American League between the Tigers and the Astros. And in fact, Verlander doesn't even have 10 to his name. The one that I've gotten a lot on Twitter that is not correct is Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw and Steve Garrison just guessed him. Clayton Kershaw has made 17 starts against the Phillies. He is tied with Max Fried for the 6th most against the Phillies. All right, not going to sit around forever and do it. We are running out of time. The other 3 pitchers, the other one that has that I said has claim to being a potential Hall of Famer is Jacob deGrom. He's 3rd all time with 21 career starts. Patrick Corbin is 2nd against the Phillies. He's made 22 starts against the Phillies. He's 6-10 with a 4.8 ERA. He's only thrown 122 innings in those 22 starts and given up 65 earned runs. The other one, former Philly Charlie Morton, has made 22 starts against them. He's 5-7 with a 4.8 ERA. He's given up 55 earned runs in 103 innings pitched. So Alcantara will make his 20th start against the Phillies tonight, but he's not the only guy who's made a lot of starts against the team they're facing. Zach Wheeler is set to make his 26th start against the Marlins in his career. He will pass Aaron Nola for 4th among active starters with 26 career starts. The other 3 guys are 3 guys that we mentioned. Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer and Charlie Morton have all made 27 starts against the Miami Marlins. And that's where this comes, the familiarity kind of comes into play a little bit here. There's no secrets between these 2 teams, right, when it comes to facing the pitchers that they faced. Bryce Harper, as Steve Garrison made mention, has really good numbers against Sandy Alcantara. The next at-bat that he takes against Alcantara will be his 40th in his career. He's got 12 hits, 6 extra base hits, a home run. He's driven in 6. He has faced Sandy Alcantara a lot. The Phillies have faced Sandy Alcantara a lot over his career, and the Phillies have some really good numbers against Alcantara over their career. This team as a whole, now granted, it does include some pitchers back when pitchers were hitting. Aaron Nola has a couple of at bats against them. Zach Wheeler has an at bat against them, but this team as a whole, over 254 at bats, has hit 299 off of Sandy Alcantara. They have a 433 slug as a team. They've hit 5 home runs. They have 76 hits. They have 22 extra base hits against Sandy Alcantara. Now, they've struck out 51 times in those 254 at-bats, so it is a strikeout rate of about 20%. But they have good numbers against Alcantara. Now, I took the no-run first inning tonight, and that was one of my bets. I took no-run first inning. Both Alcantara and Zach Wheeler have really good numbers in the first innings over their career. But I do think the Phillies have a way to win not only this game tonight, but to win the series. I know somebody asked in the chat, honest opinion, do I think the Phillies win tonight? I think if the Phillies are going to lose a game, it's going to be today. But I do think the Phillies have a very realistic chance to win tonight. I think they're going to beat Quantrill. Or at least, let me rephrase that. I think they're going to score a lot of runs off of Quantrill. It's a matter of which Taijuan Walker shows up. I hate to say this. There are no locks in baseball, but I almost feel like Sunday's going to be a lock. Jesus Luzardo has been unreal for the Phillies, and Colin Gillespie has a 6.6 ERA. So if you said rank your confidence level in terms of wins this weekend, I would take Sunday, Friday, Saturday. And so to answer the question, I forget who it was. I apologize in the chat. It was, I apologize. Sorry. Aris Fran Jose. Apologize if I messed your name up. I apologize. Asks honest opinion to the Phillies Marlins, who's winning. I think the Phillies are going to take 2 of 3 in this series. I don't know exactly in which order, but I would say that they are going to take 2 of 3 in this series. All right, I've been talking about this long enough. Let's get into this. This has been kind of the tease of the entire show. What the hell is going on in New York? Why are New York media and New York Twitter having an absolute cataclysmic meltdown over Juan Soto's start to begin his Mets tenure? Now, New York is a very interesting dynamic because you have two teams that are covered by, more times than not, the same radio stations and the same media outlets. So it's a rare situation where you know that you might get a Mets fan for a 4-hour stretch and then a Yankees fan the next 4 hours. And it is a weird dynamic, but it is one of the coolest dynamics in sports media because the two can clash in a way. Like John Marks and I were talking about it. The only thing that I could liken it to, because Mets and Yankees are like life in New York, the only thing that I could liken it to is if Philadelphia had a second football team. And half the fans in the city were Eagles fans, and half the fans in the city were Team B. But the vitriol that I have seen about Juan Soto over the last couple of days is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. Now, Juan Soto has started slowly for Juan Soto. He's hitting 221. His OBP is down. His slug is down. I get all of that. But I will say this. You signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $700 million deal. And 18 games into the season, you're ready to, like, sound the panic alarm? What is going on in New York? Like, the one that I've seen that probably is the most, like, just absolutely unhinged is a guy from WFAN named Sal Licata. Now, I don't know Sal. I don't know him personally. I don't know if he's like a high-octane guy. I don't know if he's like a personality matches the show. You know what I mean? Because there's some people that are way different on the show. It's more of a persona. And then there's some people who they're 100 miles an hour in the show, and you meet them in real life, and they're 100 miles an hour. So I don't know Sal at all. But this guy was on a absolute warpath about Juan Soto, and he's not the only one. Mets fans are in like disarray about the start that Juan Soto had. And now Juan Soto made comments the other day about hitting behind, having the protection of Aaron Judge versus not having the protection of Aaron Judge. But the reality of the situation is Pete Alonso is behind Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso is crushing the baseball to start the year. He's hitting 340. He has 5 home runs. He's got 20-plus RBI already. Like, Juan Soto is not having a 300 average, 400 OBP. Bless you, Joey. He's not having like the Juan Soto years that we've seen in the past, but we are 18 games into a season. Like, the meltdown that is happening in New York from certain New York Mets fans, and then the inverse being Yankees fans laughing because Yankees fans have turned from bring back Juan Soto, bring back Juan Soto, bring back Juan Soto to bleep Juan Soto has been one of the wildest media tours that I have seen. And I think that what plays into it again is that it's two teams in one sports city. Because there is exactly one team that Juan Soto could have signed with that would have made Yankees fans more mad and more like, I hope this guy fails, than him signing with the New York Mets. And it's the Boston Red Sox. If Soto would have signed in Boston, dear Lord, Yankees fans would have been insufferable if this start has happened. But the Mets are probably a close second, I would think, because you might live next to a Mets fan. You might be best friends with a Mets fan. You might have married a Mets fan. So, like, it's in-city fighting that's unmatched. Like, sure, LA has 2 teams, but the Dodgers and Angels don't care about each other. Chicago has 2 teams. The White Sox suck. I know that there's infighting in Chicago, but it's more like, it's almost little brother, big brother type of stuff. The Yankees fans and Mets fans hate each other. hate each other. And so it's so funny to see the dynamic between Mets fans having nuclear meltdowns and Yankees fans being like, ha ha. You know, it's like the dude from Simpsons pointing and laughing. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But you get my point. Like, it's been so strange to see this unfold. And like Sal is the example that I use because he's on WFAN. He's a prominent host. He's a big name. People know Sal. And so that's the only reason I use this. But it's been so funny to watch this unfold. Here you go. And Joey, you know what? Let's do it. I said we weren't going to get to it today, but I do want to say, those of you watching on our streaming platforms, head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show because we are officially in overtime. All right, so let me read you some tweets from Mets fans. Now, some of these are tongue-in-cheek. Like this one's tongue-in-cheek. Juan Soto sucks, parentheses, is having a bad week. Tongue-in-cheek, of course. What the bleep is Juan Soto's problem? Where's Juan Soto? Yes to the answer of Juan Soto sucks right now. And then you get to the more realistic fans that says not a single serious Mets fan is worried about Juan Soto. And this comes, unfortunately, for Juan Soto after a 0-for-5 night in which he struck out 3 times and grounded into an inning-ending double play. Most sane Mets fans, most sane baseball fans, probably you watching right now, even though you're a Phillies fan and hate the Mets just as much as I do, will tell you Juan Soto's going to be fine. Juan Soto's going to be fine. And it's not even like he's hitting 150. He's hitting 230. He's going to be fine. Most sane Mets fans will tell you that. But it is the vocal, outcrying minority of fans that are saying, this is nuts. Like, this is crazy. You should overreact. I just find it comical. I sit back and watch. But we'll see how this unfolds. Listen, Juan Soto's going to be fine. And I think the Phillies are going to be fine this weekend because I think the Phillies get back in the win column in terms of series predictions. Again, as I said, I'm going to take 2 out of 3. All right, that'll about wrap up today's show. I apologize. I felt like I was a little bit all over the place today. Sometimes you have this really good train of thought and you get derailed by one thing, and it's really hard to get the train back on the tracks. So I felt like I was a little bit all over the place today, so I apologize to you. I thank you for hanging out in today's show. Big shout out to K-Red, Linda, Elephant in the Room, Steve Garrison. Who else was in the chat? Pat Ryan. Everybody that was in the chat from the beginning, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today. We'll be back live on Monday to react to the Marlins series and to start to look ahead. Speaking of the Mets, to start to look ahead to the Mets series. We have the Mets and the Chicago Cubs for 6 games, a day off on Thursday in between. And by the way, Tuesday, we are going to have our very first in-game watch-along, do a little Manning cast. As you see with the Eagles games, they do the Franning cast. Well, we're not going to call it the Franning cast, but we will talk to Fran at some point. We're going to talk to all of our PHLY staff. I know a bunch of our friends from the PHLY Flyers, Eagles, and Sixers show are going to join us for this. So we'll chat with them for an inning and a half or so, and we'll get an update on what our friends are doing, what the Sixers and Flyers are going to be doing in the offseason, what the Eagles are doing as we get into draft week. We're going to talk to all of our friends. We'll do a pregame show, an in-game watch-along, and a postgame show. That will be Tuesday night, beginning at 6:40. First pitch in Flushing's, New York is 7:10. So our schedule for next week, Monday at 1 o'clock, normal live show for half an hour. Tuesday, pre, post, and in-game. And then, of course, Friday at 1 o'clock as well. And then don't forget, not next Monday, but the following Monday, April 28th, is we will go live 3 times a week as we're adding our Wednesday show to the mix as well. So we'll talk to you then. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Big thanks to Joey for producing today's show. Have an incredible weekend. The weather's supposed to be gorgeous. To those that celebrate, a happy Easter to you. If you don't, a happy Sunday to you as well. I hope you take in as much baseball as you possibly can and enjoy the beautiful weather. We'll talk to you live again Monday at 1 o'clock right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.